Hi, bitch besties. It's your main bitch, Melly. Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome to another episode of the Judgy Bitch Pod. Hi, bitch besties, and welcome to my very first solo episode. And look who's here. Although tired and yawning and doesn't want to do it, but this is Peanut, my sidekick. So to be honest with you guys, I had a little trouble finding a guest for this week's episode. You know, the holidays. Oh my God, he's really tired. He keeps yawning. With the holidays so close, it was a little difficult to find a guest to come on the show. So I thought, what better time than to do my very first solo episode? And, you know, with the year coming to an end, why not do a recap of this year? This was probably the most difficult year for me. I struggled the most this year. I've been through some really bad stuff, really good stuff. I had great friends along the way that supported me. And why don't we just recap it? I started the podcast. I had some great podcast episode. So let's go back and revisit that. So sit tight, have yourself a little drink. I have water in a mulled wine cup. This is a traditional German mulled wine mug from the Christmas market. We call it Glühwein in German. So cheers, bitch besties. Sit back and enjoy this episode. Tina's going to go back on the couch so I can grab my laptop with my notes on it. So yeah, here we go. So let's start with my personal year. This year here in LA started off with the devastating fires. And I wasn't spared. After I had just moved here the year before in late August, in January, the fires caused me to evacuate. And that was something I don't ever want to go through again. Although I was lucky and I didn't lose anything or anyone, and I know a lot of other people here in LA weren't as lucky as me, but still, it was still devastating for me and still horrible. And as I think back of that day, I remember I was trying to be prepared for, what might happen with the amber flying through the air and, fires popping up out of nowhere, even like further inland from the Palisades fires. I just wanted to be prepared. Coming from the East Coast, having lived on the East Coast with the hurricanes and storms we get, I knew it's best to be prepared. So that day, I had taken Peanut to Target real quick. There was a time when we still went shop at Target. and on the way back, as we drove down the street here near my house, I saw the Runyon Canyon on fire. I saw the flames, huge flames. It was more than just a campfire. It was actually the hill was on fire. And I saw it coming home. And, when you see that hill on fire, it seemed like 2 blocks away from my house. It is a little further, but, in that moment, it really seemed like it's only 2 blocks away. So I took my car home real quick in the parking garage. I had Peanut with me, luckily. And I said to Peanut, let's go walk real quick and see what's going on. Because, driving and stopping at the traffic light, I couldn't really process it quickly enough. So I took Peanut for a quick walk. We walked back to that street corner, which is literally around the corner from my apartment building. And as we were standing at the street corner, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Those flames, they were high. And as I said, they seemed so close. So I ran home with Peanut, and I think I was in complete shock. That's the only way I can explain what happened next, my stupid behavior. Because what I had done is I probably took the smallest bag I could find. I grabbed some clothes for like a night or two. I took a quick shower because in my mind, I was like, who knows when I can shower next? And my hair was greasy and I, didn't want to be like this for the next few days. While doing all this, I was texting with a friend of mine who said, come here, you can stay with me. So then I grabbed, don't laugh, I was in shock. I grabbed the Truly, the spiked seltzers I had in my fridge and Peanut's food. And I jumped in the car and I started driving. And of course, I hit traffic on the 101. While I was sitting in traffic, I texted my good friend and coworker in New York City. I was still employed in New York City at that time, working remotely. And I told her, I have my laptop. I can work from my friend's house tomorrow if I have to. I was so in shock. My mind was going 100 miles per hour. And she said, Melly, do not worry a thing. I do not want you to turn your laptop on. I'll handle everything. Don't worry. And I'm so grateful for my friend at that time because she took over for me. She told my managers I was going to be out, what's going on. And so grateful for great friends. I'm beyond grateful for my friend who took Peanut and me in the middle of the night or like late evening and, offered us to stay for as long as needed. I mean, in crisis like this, you really see how the community comes together and supports each other, and you see true friendships, and I'm so beyond grateful. And luckily, the next day, they were able to put out the fire on the Runyon Canyon fairly quickly, and the evacuation orders were lifted, and we were able to get back home. And so we did. And luckily, nothing happened. My apartment building was completely the same as before. Nothing happened. And as I put down the smallest little bag that I grabbed, it hit me. I think that's the moment when the shock wore off for me. And I was like, this bag would have been everything that I had left. I would have lost everything else. And I know people actually lost everything, and it probably sounds ridiculous to them that I'm even having those thoughts, but this is the kind of trauma that I went through. But it hit me in that moment. And I thought, if God forbid anything had happened to this building, this would have been everything I had left. I didn't even grab my birth certificate. I didn't even, grab anything valuable or memorable or, I was so in shock at that moment. I grabbed yoga pants and my Julie and my dog. So that was a tough start to the year. I'm glad nothing further happened to us, but that shook me to the core. And, the weeks after this, I tried my best to support the community, to support the people who lost everything. Ned and I donated a lot of things. We offered our help, especially for the animals too. Peanut donated a lot of toys and food, and I tried my hardest to support the community as best as possible because I understood how fortunate I was that I didn't lose everything. And I know other people weren't as fortunate. And my heart still goes out to them and breaks for them. And then later in January, the new administration took over. And, I don't want to make this podcast political. Don't want to contribute to how separated this country is at the moment. However, what we have been through this year caused by this administration was part of the struggle I went through this year. Seeing how family were torn apart, how people were kidnapped in daylight from the street, thrown in detention centers that remind me very much of the past of my home country, and kids left behind, pets left behind, dogs left behind. It's heartbreaking. It's devastating to see that there's still a lot of people who support this out there. Is heartbreaking. It really makes me question the morals of people, and it really makes me question humanity. And that's all I want to say to that topic, because this year was truly eye-opening and heartbreaking at the same time. And to witness all this, it's still unbelievable to me. And I'm just hoping and praying that this time will be over soon, one way or another. And as I'm hoping and praying that things will get better soon, it does give me a little hope to see how many people rally together to demonstrate in a really friendly way. The new mayor of New York City gives me hope. To see so many states turning blue or leaning towards blue, it does give me hope. So I'm going hopeful into the new year. But back to my story of this year. So then what happened in March was another devastating time of my life, because I was laid off from my job, my New York City job that I loved so much. I loved everybody I worked with. I'm still friends with a lot of people. Couldn't understand why I was laid off. It was devastating to me because I really, really enjoyed the lifestyle I'd created. I left my job back when I was working in New York City. But once I moved to LA and they allowed me to work remotely, that was my dream. That was the life I wanted to live. Work from home, be with Peanut. I loved my job. I went above and beyond. I did so much more than just a typical executive assistant position. Helped create processes and optimize things. And I was a really integral part of the team and I enjoyed it so much. And when I was laid off, it felt like somebody ripped the rug out from underneath me. I was so devastated. I couldn't understand it. And the reason why I was laid off, well, it was because I was remote. And I was like, you guys allowed me to work remotely back in August. And now in March, you're laying me off for the reason that I am remote. That doesn't make sense. It was truly devastating to me. But it also gave me new opportunities to look for a job here in LA. And later on, it inspired me to have a very great podcast episode with my now good friend, Steven. In this episode, he, as a recruiter, gave so much great advice on how to apply for jobs, how to prepare for interviews and all that. And he did just an amazing job, not only as my recruiter, but also as my podcast guest. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to this episode yet, I highly recommend to go back and listen to it. Because as I mentioned, there's so much great advice in it. And we also bitch a little bit about, all these efforts to bring people back into the office. I mean, what the fuck? Why can't we just work remotely? It's not like we haven't shown over the last 4 to 5 years that we do just as great or even a greater job working from home. So why bring everybody back into the office? But to not get back into that argument again or that discussion again, go back and listen to the episode and let me know what you think. But what made me proud in that moment also was that for the first time in my life, I truly stood up for myself. So after I was laid off and after I had digested the shock a little bit, and I realized I need to fight for what I want. So I sent emails to my old job in New York City, very friendly, very kind, and just showed them what I was working on, what my impact was on the company and the company's goals. Because I believe the people who made the decision to lay me off was truly based on the fact that I'm a remote worker. It had nothing to do with my actual impact, my actual work. And it was certainly not a sign of my capabilities or my skills. So I felt that I needed to tell them. And I was somewhat successful with that. I did manage to open people's eyes and I received positive feedback. And it was truly a satisfaction for me that a couple months later in the year, I received word that people are still fighting to hire me back because they then realized what a great impact I had. But unfortunately, higher ups still didn't allow to hire remote people. So we weren't successful with that. But it still gave me great satisfaction that they realized what a great worker I was and they were trying to get me back. That made me feel really good. And that also showed me that you really truly have to fight for yourself. You have to fight for the things you want. And let me be an inspiration for you. If you're in a similar situation, speak up. You have to speak up and fight for yourself. So then in April, I was lucky enough to find a new job, but it came with a but. The new job, I could already tell from the interview process, was not going to be anything like my so beloved New York City job. In the interview process, people already warned me of the manager I was going to support, that she's a tough cookie. She's not easy to handle. She's very direct and, just not very comfortable to work with, to put it this way. And so I knew I needed a job. I was out of work. I have bills to pay. Peanut and I need a roof over our head. But I was not looking forward to starting there. I was not excited for this job. I knew I needed it and there wasn't any other opportunities out there at the time. So I knew I had to take it, but I was not excited. Well, I really wasn't excited for this job. And that's an understatement. I was so dreading to start this job that I got myself to end up in the hospital. One afternoon on a weekend, I forgot if it was a Saturday or Sunday, I had my friend's dog here to sit while she was traveling and Peanut. And I was walking down the street and all of a sudden I had the worst stomach pain. Like I could barely even walk the dogs home. So I went back home. I thought, maybe I just have to use the bathroom, and I tried to take some medication and I tried to sit it out, but it didn't get any better. It only got worse. So then in the middle of the night, I couldn't even lay down. I couldn't even lean back and sit back. I could only sit crunched over. I decided I need to go to the emergency room. Something is not right. So I made the decision to leave the dogs home alone. I knew my friend was going to come back the next morning or at noon. So I knew it was a long time for the dogs to be home, but I didn't have a choice. So crunched over as I was and so much pain, I took the dogs downstairs to go to the bathroom one last time. And then I called an Uber to go to the emergency room. And of course, it took hours in the emergency room. They gave me painkillers that didn't work. The doctor that was in charge of me in the emergency room really was young and brand new. I think she really knew what she was doing yet, to be honest with you. Long story short, in the morning hours, after I've spent the entire night in the emergency room, they finally admitted me to the hospital where a more senior doctor just took a look at my chart and my blood results and, everything I was describing symptoms wise. And she said, you have gastritis. So she gave me antacid medication for my stomach. Then my friend came back from her trip and she was amazing. She came straight to the hospital, got the keys from me, drove to my house to pick up the dogs, took Peanut in for the night. And, the dogs were fine. Thank God. Nothing happened. They were good boys, just stayed home waiting. And then the next day I came out of the hospital. My friend actually picked me up. I'm so grateful for her. And that ended up in pushing out my start date for my new job by 2 weeks. So I felt relieved. I didn't have to start there for another 2 weeks, and I could take another 2 weeks to relax with Peanut. But my gut was right. Once I started my new job and I started working, I realized quickly this job is a struggle. I'm not going to lie. It's a struggle for me. It's a struggle working with that manager. It's a struggle from the tasks I have to do there. It's not like my New York City job at all. It's very junior level. I have a lot of downtime, a lot of times where I'm not super busy. So far, there is no way that I can really contribute in other ways. It's a struggle. And that struggle took a mental toll on me this year. They're also working East Coast hours. So I wake up at 4:20 in the morning and boy, can I tell you, I'm not a morning person. That alone is already a struggle and that's taking a toll on my health. And then having to leave Peanut home alone for so long. He's great though. He sleeps all day long. He can hold, going to the bathroom for up to 12 hours and he's home 10 hours. So he is really okay with that. But it's more my mommy guilt. Me, my mommy doggy heart. Yeah, I check on the camera a lot during the day to see what he's doing. And sometimes he walks around and is looking. He doesn't seem stressed. He doesn't seem anxious. He doesn't seem bored. He doesn't do anything. Just look around, take a little lap in the apartment, and then he goes back on the couch and continues sleeping for a couple more hours. So Peanut is fine. Just, I feel guilty about leaving him home alone. So after work, I rush home the fastest as I can and I just take Peanut to the doggy park or sometimes we go hiking. I make it a point to spend the rest of the day with him and make it enjoyable and also tire him out for the next day. And the good thing is about starting work so early is that I'm home by 3:00 in the afternoon. So we still have a lot of rest of the day together. Yeah. But everything comes with the but or with the good side. And this job really brought me closer to my friend Sarah, who was later on the podcast. And we had a really fun episode talking about the Kim Kardashian nipple bra and talking about her Swedish roots and playing the funniest game ever with the Swedish sayings. I had a blast. What a great episode. And speaking of great episode, let's dive into my podcast journey. Because of my struggles with my job and with everything that had happened so far in the year, I needed something else. I needed something that brings me joy and that distracts me from the day-to-day struggles. So in July, or maybe it was early August, I can't remember, I was watching the Alex Cooper documentary on Hulu. And until that point, I didn't even know who Alex Cooper was. So I also started binge listening to the Call Her Daddy podcast from episode 1 on. So I had a few years to catch up on. And around that same time, my building where I live in announced that they were creating a podcast room. And I thought, all right, there's one sign after another. Maybe that's what I should do. I have opinions. I can talk for hours. It's hard to shut me up sometimes. Maybe I should start my own podcast. And, I'm a judgy bitch sometimes, especially when it comes to Bravo TV. So that's how I started my podcast. And who better to have my first episode with than my best friend, Simone? Simone brings out my funny side. Simone always makes me laugh. We always have a good time together. And yeah, we like to go on vacation together and get drunk all day long and sit by the pool and sip cocktails. So the first episode was called Two Drunk Bitches. I mean, what can I say? It couldn't have been any more perfect. The episode was so much fun. Simone is also German, just like me. So we dove into some German fun sayings and traditions, and we just laughed our way through the entire episode. And later on, she came back for my first true crime episode. We spoke about the Idaho murder case that has been haunting me for the entire year. I think that was one of my deepest episodes for me personally, emotionally. And I'm so glad we did it because ever since we spoke about it and I got everything to say that was on my mind and off my chest, I feel so much better now. It's not haunting me anymore. And I'm so glad we created it. And with the podcast came TikTok because I realized I have to promote my podcast on social media. And I know TikTok is a very strong medium here in the United States to promote my podcast. And I didn't have a TikTok before. So I started from scratch. I had to learn everything. And most of all, I had to overcome my fear of creating TikToks where I just speak into the camera. I don't mind the podcast so much. This is like a Zoom call. I'm so used to this from work. But just speaking in the camera and creating TikToks, and I know other people even sing and dance and whatnot. For some reason, I was shitting my pants. I just was so scared. But then I met my TikTok friend, Molly. I love Molly. I'm girl crushing on Molly. And Molly gave me great advice, not only about TikTok, but also later she came back for a second episode and she read my birth chart. And boy, was I floored. I mean, how can that be so accurate? Truly stunning. Molly's birth chart reading was the most stunning episode this year. I mean, you have to go back and listen to it. It's amazing. She did such a great job. Podcast helped me so much this year. I mean, honestly, some of my proudest moments and my fondest memories came from the podcast this year. I remember when I brought my ex-coworker and friend Anna on. Anna and I, we used to work in New York in 2021, I believe, and we stayed in touch on social media, but we not ever really actually talked. So it was so nice to reconnect with her. And her episode was really inspirational to a lot of you bitch besties. And there was one of my bitch besties who was also one of my best friends in real life, who was so inspired by Anna's journey, and everything Anna said motivated her to change the trajectory of her life. And she also got a tattoo to be reminded and inspired of it every single day. And that makes me so proud. And I know you're listening right now. I know you know who you are. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all your support this year, for always giving me feedback and making me a better version of myself. I love you very much. Thanks for listening. But all of you bitch besties, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for all of your engagement on my social media posts, all your likes, all your comments, and your feedback. And if you ever want me to discuss another topic, please feel free to just DM me and let me know. And if you would like to be a guest on my podcast, man, come on. I'd like to invite you to be my next podcast guest. But as you know, we also had some deeper topics on the podcast. If you remember, my friend Tammy came on and shared with us her story and her journey, and grief was the topic of that episode. And Tammy, who also has a podcast called The Path to Transformation, showed us how she turned her grief in a true path of transformation. And then she invited me to be a guest on her podcast. For the first time, I was a guest on another podcast. And not only that, Tammy was also so sweet that she shared the recording of that podcast with me. So I was able to share with you guys. And in that podcast episode, I shared a lot of my personal life and how I ended up here in the United States. And, I've been through an abusive marriage, and I shared a lot of that, how I overcame that and how I dealt with that. And we went deep on my podcast and on her podcast. And then there was my friend Kat. Kat is also from the East Coast. Kat and I connected immediately. I love the name Kat, and she spells it with a C, like the true cat. She always has something cat related on her outfits. And Kat is a creative. Kat is an actor. I think she has the trifecta. She's an actor, a singer, and a dancer. And I just saw her in another play now in the holiday season, and she is just so good. She's just truly so good. She is so funny and so witty, and I just love watching her perform. But Kat came on my podcast and not only shared her actor side with us, she also told us about the first musical parody she'd written and produced and premiered at the Hollywood Fringe. I mean, wow. Just wow. But not only that, Kat suffered a heart attack in her 30s as a woman. That's very unusual. And she shared her story with us as well. And she was very open and honest about it. And that just made me love her even more. If you have a chance to see Kat perform somewhere, I highly recommend you jump on that chance. She is so good. And then I had an episode with Romy, my friend Romy, sweet Romy. We did an episode on Love Island. And that episode was actually one that brought the highest rate of engagement on my TikTok. Romy and I, we were very candid in this episode. We shared our honest opinions about how we experienced watching Love Island and our thoughts about how the cast was portrayed. And, we just shared really honestly our thoughts about this. And the clips that I shared on my TikTok had the highest engagement rate because all of a sudden people started to discuss Love Island again. Although the episode, I believe, aired in October, I think, and Love Island ended in the summer at some point, people still weren't over it. So that just showed that this episode was right on time. We were late, but right on time. And one of my favorite episodes from this year, of course, was the Cavapoo episode. Dina from the Cavapoo Friends New York City came on to talk an hour about dogs and Cavapoos with me. And I mean, that's my favorite topic, Peanut. I could talk for hours, days, and weeks about Peanut, and so could Dina about her dog Teddy or Cavapoos in general, and we had a blast. I mean, what a great episode. So much fun. Finally, I found somebody I could talk dogs with for a whole hour, and she shared it with her community, which I really appreciated, and what a fun episode. Then I had some other episodes that were more informative than fun, inspired by my fibroid in my uterus. I've been diagnosed with that 2 years ago, that I have a huge fibroid in my uterus and that I have endometriosis. So after I moved last year and then after I lost my job at the beginning of this year and I found a new job and, health insurance that came along with that, I decided it's finally time to get that fibroid removed. And boy, what a journey that was. I got it removed, I think 6 or 7 weeks ago now. It turned out to be multiple fibroids, the biggest one being a 10 centimeter big ball. Huge, bigger than a grapefruit. And there were multiple other smaller fibroids the size of grapes. The surgery was pretty eventless. I was lucky. I was only in pain for like 2 days, but nothing major. I was able to just take ibuprofen to handle the pain. The doctor almost insisted to prescribe me Oxycontin. And I don't know why that is a thing here in America, why doctors so easily prescribe such hard and addictive drugs. I will never understand it. I refused it. I did not want it. And she asked me why. And I'm like, because it's highly addictive. It's part of the drug epidemic this country has. I don't think it's needed. She tried her hardest to convince me, but I refused. And boy, was I right. Because I handled the pain I had just with ibuprofen. And guess what? You take an ibuprofen with food, you wait 15 minutes, and the pain was gone. I didn't need any stronger painkillers than that. So the pain was not the issue. I took off for 2 weeks from work to really recover, and that time was actually needed. I needed to not only recover from the surgery, but also from the past months. And I enjoyed those 2 weeks. The first week, I was able to really disconnect. I was able to really just sit on the couch and relax. My really, really good friend was so sweet. She took Peanut for the weekend after my surgery. And although she's pregnant herself and had her own struggles that she was going through, she insisted to come and pick me up after surgery, take Peanut. And then when I was ready, and I miss Peanut so much. So already by Sunday, I texted her, please bring my baby back home. And she did. I'm so, so grateful for her. What a great friend. Love her. So then I had Peanut back with me. So I had to walk him, which honestly just made me heal faster. Walking is good for that type of surgery that I had. So going on slow walks just around the block with my Peanut here in LA in the sun. Otherwise sitting on the couch, binge watching TV. I mean, what better can I ask for? And when do I freaking win the lottery so that I can live that kind of life? The second week, I must say, I started feeling the Sunday scares. I don't know why. It started on Monday, and I, in my head, was like, only one more week, and then I have to go back to work. I don't know why that happened. So the second week wasn't as enjoyable as the first one, although physically I was starting to feel much better. But that's also when I started to struggle with my hormones, which ChatGPT, and you may remember that I call him David. So David said it's absolutely normal that after having such a huge fibroid cut out of my uterus, that it's normal that, healing takes some time and also the hormones take some time to go back into their normal levels. And for me, that came with a lot of mood swings. 1 minute I was completely fine and normal, and the next minute I had the worst depression and I questioned all my life choices. That was a tough one. And that took a couple weeks to get over. And I have a new understanding of depression. It's so hard in those moments to understand that this is not the truth and this is just something your body goes through. And honestly, I don't have advice how to really deal with depression. As I mentioned, mine was just from hormones and it only lasted a couple hours and then I was back to normal. But I kind of understand and get depression a little better now because of my experience. I don't want to say I'm an expert. I'm far away from being an expert and I don't have any advice, but I understand what a struggle it is and how hard it is. But my experience with my fibroid removal and, being diagnosed with endometriosis inspired me to reach out to Dr. Niklas Fogelson and have him come on the pod for an episode about endometriosis. And that episode was one of my most successful episodes so far, with the most listeners so far. Dr. Fogelson did an amazing job explaining what endometriosis is and what we can do. And I was so proud of myself. I had just started the podcast a couple months ago. I'm struggling so much this year, but still I have the strength to reach out to a specialist, not just a doctor, a specialist that I've never met in my life before, I've never even known before, that I have the guts to reach out to him and to invite him on my podcast and to interview him. I don't have a background in broadcasting or interviewing or anything like that. I come from a business background. So that made me really proud of myself to sit down with a specialist doctor and to interview him. And what a great episode came out of it. And that then later inspired me to reach out to Emily from the Perimenopause Hub. And we did an episode on perimenopause. Although there was a little technical struggles in that episode, because for me, I couldn't really see or hear what Emily was saying. It kept freezing on my end. And it was really hard to, continue the interview. But when I was editing the episode, I noticed the picture was crystal clear. You could hear everything she was saying. I was able to cut it together so it somehow made sense, although, the interview itself was such a struggle and I wasn't able to ask more pinpointed questions. But Emily did such an amazing job in explaining perimenopause and all the symptoms and what you can do, how to track it and all that I decided to keep the episode. And I'm still very proud of it. I think it's still a great episode and I'm very grateful for Emily to come on. Then I had an episode with Stephanie, who is a psychic and a medium and so many other things she does. And I was dreaming of an episode like this. I always wanted to have a visit with a medium and I always wanted somebody to channel my crossed over loved ones. And guess what? My grandpa showed up, my oppa showed up, and it was so fun to hear from him. But also Stephanie gave us a midday meditation, which I really enjoyed, and just her sharing her journey, how she discovered being a medium and everything surrounding it. I loved it. It was a great episode. And then my most recent episode with Paige. Paige and I have been friends for probably 9 or 10 years. I've known Paige from the East Coast, and I know that she's also a big fan of true crime. So when I reached out to her and asked her if she would want to come on the pod and be my guest and do a true crime episode with me, Paige was excited and happy. And she shared with me that I'm living her dream. She said that she is dreaming of having her own podcast. So I said, great, come on. I share everything I know so far, everything I've learned, and we can record a great episode together. And so we did. My most recent episode with Paige. And I look forward to so many more. Paige and I were talking currently about our next episode or episodes that we might record. So you're going to see much more from Paige, hopefully in the future. And I love that. I love Paige as my co-host for true crime episodes. And last but certainly not least, as I mentioned earlier, I started the podcast thinking that I have a lot of opinions about reality TV shows, especially Bravo shows. And my friend Holly shares this passion with me. So of course I had to have Holly on, and Holly was so kind and offered to come on for 2 episodes. So we recap together the Valley Season 1 and the Valley Season 2. And I love those episodes. My heart beats for Bravo. Holly really spilled the tea. Holly had some great opinions and takes on the shit going down in the Valley. And we had some great episodes. And I'm sure you will hear more from Holly in the future. Holly and I are talking about our next episodes that we could do. And I just love it. Holly is a great friend, one of the great friends that came out of my walking group, the Los Angelistas. I'm so grateful for this walking group, although I haven't been for a couple months to any walks because of my surgery and recovery time. But I look forward to joining them again. And if you're in LA and you are looking for a women community, I highly recommend to looking up the Los Angelistas on Instagram and join us for the next walk. Boy, what a year. I truly learned so much. I'm so grateful for all my friends that came on this wild journey with me this year, who supported me in anything and everything I did. I know a lot of you are not necessarily podcast listeners, but you listen to my podcast and you like everything I post and you engage with my posts. I love that so much. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you so much for your support and your friendship. It truly means the world to me. And you, my bitch besties out there, the Spotify 2025 Wrapped, that blew me away. I didn't know we have listeners from other countries, Croatia, Taiwan, UK, Germany. I mean, hello. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so much for your support. Please continue supporting me and this podcast. Please continue engaging with my posts, liking them, commenting on them. When I put out polls or, those Instagram questions, please share your feedback with me. It means the world and it truly helps me to be better. I want to put out content that you guys enjoy. So please let me know if you have any feedback, if there's anything you don't like. I'm open to positive and constructive feedback. So thank you so much for this year. I wish everybody a happy holidays. Hope you have some time to recharge. You have some time to spend it with people you love, and you can take a break from everything that was happening this year. I truly hope next year is going to be so much better for all of us. And I can't wait to see you back here on the podcast. I will be taking time off for the rest of the year. So this is the last episode for this year. But I'll see you back here next year. I want to thank you again. I love you, my bitch besties. Happy holidays. All the best for the new year. And as we say in German, slide good into the new year. Guten Rutsch. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Cheers, bitch besties. Bye. That was it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you are as excited and opinionated as Peanut and me, please give us a follow on Instagram at the Judgy Bitch Pod. And don't forget, please also tell everybody you know about this new podcast so they come and follow us as well. We would much appreciate it. Would you like to be part of it? Sure, go ahead. Send us a DM with your feedback, your hot takes, and your unapologetic opinions. We might read them next time. And last but not least, don't forget, please follow, review, and rate wherever you listen to this podcast. See you next week. Cheers, bitches.